The International Monetary Fund is warning of a worldwide recession if the war in the Middle East doesn't end soon. If the conflict drags on, the IMF says energy and food prices will spike higher, stunting economic growth across the globe.
Last year ended on an upbeat note. The private sector adapted to a changing business environment, helped by lower than announced U.S. tariffs, fiscal support in some countries, favorable financial conditions, and a tech boom. Despite downside risks, this momentum was expected to carry into 2026, and we were looking to lift up our global growth forecast. Now, war in the Middle East has halted this momentum.
Our senior business reporter, Peter Armstrong, joins me live in our studio. Peter, the IMF and the World Bank, they released their latest global financial stability report today. What does it tell us about the state of the world's economy?
Something that's probably not going to come as too much of a surprise, that the war in the Middle East and the disruption of the global energy markets is going to have an impact on the global economy around the world, right? Mm-hmm. Baseline is that this is going to take a bad situation and make it worse. We're already dealing with tariffs, as the IMF said. We had started to see a bit of an uptick. The war sort of knocks all of that out. And we know the hows and the whys, right? The disruption to oil, to fertilizer, to helium, all of these things that are supposed to be coming out of the Gulf are causing problems. So what they did is they gave a baseline, and then they gave two sort of alternate scenarios. And the baseline is actually not horrible. It says that the global economy is going to grow 3.1% in 2026. Mm-hmm. That's down 0.2% from the earlier forecast, but it's still pretty solid growth. Mm-hmm. It saw that inflation would go up to 4.4%. Those adverse scenarios, though, the first one explores what would happen if oil stays at $100 a barrel through 2026 and then went back down to $75 a barrel through 2027. That's not a wildly out of line forecast. That's something that could absolutely happen, in that the global economy would grow just 2.5%. Then that has a severe scenario where oil costs $110 a barrel this year, but goes up to $125 in 2027. And in that scenario, the global growth would slow to around 2%. And what it warns is that in that scenario, at just 2% growth globally, you'd have a bunch of economies that have slipped into a recession. You'd have India and China still growing at 3, 4, 5%. But you would have a very real risk that the economy could slip further and actually go into a recession.
And what about Canada? How would a global recession play out here?
So in Canada, I'm reading from the report here, in Canada, growth is projected to slow from 1.7% in 2025 to 1.5% in 2026. So below what we had seen. But Canada's pretty insulated from this, right? We're a net exporter of energy products. We make our own fertilizer and potash instead of the urea that you see coming out of the Middle East. And as a result of that, Canada is going to post, or is now expected under this forecast, to post the second best growth in the G7, only after the United States. So 1.5% growth, it's down from where it would have been, because that makes sense. The global economy has taken a bit of a beating as a result of this war, but the damage done by this war is going to be largely concentrated in poorer countries, in South Asia, that are more reliant on Persian Gulf oil. I'm looking at Bangladesh, I'm looking at Pakistan, and we're already seeing the impacts hit there.
All right, Peter, thank you. That was senior business reporter Peter Armstrong.